Welcome to Chessbox. This is a game between FIDE Master Wanyama Harold and Mukose Emmanuel. This is the Innovation Cup round 4, and FM Wanyama Harold opens the game with 1d4, and Mukose Emmanuel, we know him for playing the Park defense, the King's Indian defense. He likes defenses which are full of fury, so he adjusts himself, leaves Mary Kevin to pass by. As he goes to play his first move, he plays knight comes to f6, and this position we see pawn c4, then we see g6, and in this position see knight comes to c3, then bishop comes to g7, and now e4. So d6 is supposed to be played, stop e5. Then now we see pawn comes to f3, short castling, and then bishop comes to e3. So in this position, knight comes to d7, which is a new move. Now it's justifying the two pushes, so he goes ahead and plays h4, and to stop the h4 ideas, you have to go ahead and play h5 to stop those ideas. So Mukose plays h5. So now so many to be played here. We see queen comes to d2, which is the move chosen by the FIDE Master. Now you see that the bishop is going to, pawn is going to move forward, and Mukose has to play, goes ahead and plays c5. Now in case of pawn takes, then pawn takes, and now the knight would have secured the square, which is knight comes to e5. It's a very good square, and FIDE Master doesn't wish to give Mukose Emmanuel such a good square for his pieces. He always wants to push on to squeeze him accordingly. So he goes ahead and plays knight comes to e2, and now Mukose has to find, in case of d5, then still the knight would have gotten that square. So we see knight comes to c6. Castling is a good move, d5 is a good move, and also knight will be able to come this side. So he goes ahead and finds castling by far, and after castling we see that moves which can be played. So he goes ahead and plays f5. So f5 has been played. Even queen f5 would be played, would be a good move. So f5, anticipating to play f4 and then put the queen. So pawn takes, and now there are so many ways of how you can take. For example, if in case of knight takes c5, then we could see knight d4, bishop e6, then knight takes e6, f takes e6, opening up for the rook. At the same time, we could see queen comes to e1, moving away and putting the rook under the eye of the queen here. So we see queen would come to c8, then king b1, f4, and this would be a very interesting game to play. But after pawn takes c5, even the simple pawn takes c5 could be played, but the issue is the queen and the rook are all eyes on the queen, which is on d8. So, and remember, Mukose Emmanuel doesn't wish to play a game with Harold which has a queen, so he would always look forward to remove the queen in the game. That means he will always be looking forward to have a queen exchange in the game. Let us see how he goes ahead and plays this game. The two players have been in top form for this tournament. Mukose Emmanuel beat Kamoga Rajab in round 1, and now Harold has also been playing very well in this tournament. This is the Innovation Cup Season 3. So he plays pawn takes, and in this position after pawn takes, we could see the immediate bishop can come in, which is the only move he could have to play in the position. Now he goes ahead and plays bishop comes to h6. Now remember, the queen is also putting an eye on the queen on d8, and remember Mukose would wish to play queenless with Harold. So moves like knight coming to e5 can be anticipated from Mukose Emmanuel to attack the pawn, which is on c4. So he plays knight comes to e5. Now you see he wants to have the queen exchange, and the game can be on. Either queen comes to g5 or even queen comes to e3 is a very powerful move, opening up for the queen attack. So queen e3 can be thought of, which is the only square where the queen can be safe, and black has no time to win the pawn, which is on c4, because the queen will be under attack. So in this position, it is Harold who is supposed to think, but queen e3 should be in the thoughts. Or the queen comes to g5. Remember, he has to put an eye on the bishop, which is on h6. A tough player. Yes, he plays queen comes to g5, and now the rook is attacking the queen. At the same time, the knight is also attacking the pawn, which is on c4. So the queen is putting an eye on the bishop, which is on h6. So Mukose has to see how best he can go about, and if you look at the advantage, he still has a +2 advantage, that is Harold, FIDE Master. To d7 is a good move, unlike moves like either queen coming to any of the squares, because the knight can jump in on d5 and it will be havoc for black. So queen move is prohibited. So this is the Innovation Cup Season 3 and this is board 9. The players have to play interesting chess. This is a rapid tournament with 15 minutes plus 10 seconds. So he plays pawn comes to f6. Now in this position, queen comes to e3 is forced because you have to put an eye on the bishop, which is on h6. It's the only move Harold has in the game, also eyeing. So it doesn't work. For example, in case of moves like rook takes, then f takes queen, and after rook takes f8, king takes f8, and after bishop comes and takes the pawn, then the knight can still take the pawn, and means there is no work done. The pieces are still the same and the advantage is less. That's why after f6, rook is out of the question. Harold has to go ahead and retrieve back the queen to e3. So he gets ahead and takes his time, thinks a bit, and then he plays queen comes to e3, which is the only move now. The rook is putting an eye on the queen, which is on d8. And remember, if the queen jumps to any of these squares, the knight comes in on d5 instantly, attacking the queen, which is either on those two squares, which would not be a good move. So in this position, the only safe move for black is supposed to play bishop comes to d7. He plays queen comes to b6 and knight d5 is the strongest move in the position, and Harold finds it within a second. He plays knight comes to d5, and now you see the queen has only one square, which is queen comes to a2, to try to move away from the knight fork. In case of queen comes to a6, then the knight can fork the queen and the rook. So Mukose goes ahead and plays queen comes to a6, which is not a good move because this calls for the immediate knight comes to c7. But first you have to first of all eliminate the bishop. Bishop takes bishop, and after king takes, then now you can go ahead and play this move. Even if the queen is putting an eye on this pawn, in case of queen takes, then the knight can still come on c3, opening up for the bishop attack on the queen, and the rook can be taken freely. So it means Mukose has to see a way forward on how to go about it, but Harold has everything in control. He has to just think of it accordingly, but Harold has to punish it. Then first of all takes the bishop, good move, and after taking the bishop, the king has to take the bishop. So he takes the bishop, king takes bishop. Okay, now the immediate knight comes to c7 is a good move. Harold has to find this move because now this will be forking the queen and the rook. Oh my god, Harold doesn't play it. First plays king safety, plays knight comes to c3, protecting his pawn, which is on c4, and now he's willing to go ahead and take the knight on c7 and forking the queen and the rook. So Mukose still has to go ahead and play. If he plays a move like queen s7, then this knight can still come in, attacking the queen, and now in case of queen comes down, then the knight comes in on c7, which is very, very dangerous. So Mukose has to, even if for example he tries knight takes pawn, then the bishop can take, and after queen takes, then now the knight can still come to b6, forking the queen and the rook. So it means there is no work done, so that one can't be played. Let's see what he can play in the position. So it means Mukose goes ahead and plays knight comes to d4, which is also a simple move, trying to attack Harold, and now immediately Harold has this knight comes to c7, forking the rook and the queen. So Harold has to find that move because now the knight which is on d5, okay, it is also putting some pressure on all these squares alongside the king. The knight which is on e5 is also putting eyes on those squares. So Harold has only one move, which is knight comes c7, forking the queen. Okay, Mukose has to play, so he plays knight comes c7, and now Mukose has to play queen comes to a6. It's the move which has to be thought of, because now remember that the queen can also come on queen f4, which is going to be very, 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 very powerful. He gets his hand, puts it on the queen, and now he has to play queen c6, which is the only move in the position. He puts his hand, oh my god, he finds it, he plays queen comes to c6, and now Harold has to go ahead and win the rook, and after winning the rook, he plays knight takes, and now Mukose has to come up and develop the bishop, attacking this pawn. At the same time, rook will attacking the knight. So Mukose plays it. He plays bishop comes to e6. Now you see that the bishop and the knight are attacking the pawn, the rook is just attacking the knight. So there's no way the knight is going to run away from the hands of Mukose. So Harold ignores that and plays knight comes to d4. Now he's putting an eye on the pawn, which is on e7. Now in case rook has to go ahead and win the knight, because remember now your piece has been taken, so Mukose goes ahead and plays rook takes, and now Harold goes ahead and takes the pawn. Knight takes pawn on e7. Now in this position there is queen comes to f4. For example, if queen comes to f4, then queen comes to c3. Remember now the queen and the knights were looking at the square, which was on c2. In case of knight takes c4, then bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4. Remember now the knight comes, f2 would be powerful, checking the king and the queen, and I can tell you Harold will be busted. In case of the immediate b3, then knight check can be losing on the spot. After bishop c4, in case of pawn comes to f3, still knight comes to e2 will be very powerful, and this position I can tell you Harold will be busted. So Mukose has to take his time and find queen comes to f4 is going to be a very powerful and brilliant move. If he can be able to find it, I can tell you Harold will be busted. So Mukose gets his hand, plays his queen. Oh my god, he misses it. Plays queen comes to a6, and this brings back Harold in the game. So Harold has to retreat back some of his pieces. He has to play any of the two moves, and then the game can be very safe for him. Harold has survived to lose this game on the spot, and now he's still back in the game. Mukose missed. Knight comes to d5, and Mukose has to see what to do about this position, because knight is coming back on c7 to do what it has done to him before. So he has to think about how to go about this. So in this position, the knight can still take the pawn, which is on c4. The bishop can take the knight, and Mukose has to think very well, because the knight will be attacking the queen. So Mukose plays a knight takes pawn, and Harold has only one move, which is queen comes to c3. But remember, Harold is an exchange up, because when Harold becomes an exchange up, is very tough. He plays queen comes to c3. Now you see that the queen is moving away from the attack of the knight, which was on e3. Now it's attacking the knight at the same time threatening to play knight c7. So it means Mukose has a very big task to prove. So in this position, his only move he has to take the knight, which is on d5. And now after taking, then he can go ahead and push this pawn, which is very good. So he takes it, bishop takes, and now pawn takes, and this position he goes ahead and pushes the pawn. So Harold takes the knight, and Mukose has to go ahead and take. Now in this position, Harold has to bring in other moves, other rooks, other pieces to come in. So he plays rook comes to e1. Now he's planning to bring in the pieces into attack. So in this position, you see that now the rook is putting an eye on the check. So Mukose has one rook comes to s7, or rook comes to f8 and then block the check on f7. Those are the only two moves he has in the position. Yes, he gets his hand to play. He plays rook comes to a7, avoiding the check. Then Harold goes ahead and plays rook comes to e4. Now he wants to align the two rooks, and now he can emphasize the check. So Mukose has to go ahead and try to play this game safely. A simple pawn comes forward is a good move. Let us see if he can try to push that pawn to see if he can create some threats in the position. So Mukose Emmanuel is fighting on, but Harold knows it that he has to just play safe so that he can try to get a result from this position. Remember, he's an exchanger. Or Mukose doesn't play good move. He plays king comes here, and now Harold goes ahead and plays rook comes to a1. Then now rook comes in to attack the pawn. Mukose plays, and then Harold plays pawn. Now in this position, Harold is emphasizing the rook check. So queen comes and takes, and after queen takes, then Harold also takes the pawn. So Mukose is in check, and he plays a bad move. He plays king goes to the last column, then rook check, and now king comes back to g7. So Harold has to find this queen move. Queen comes to g8 check, and in case of king comes to h6, yes, he finds it. Queen comes to g6, and then king comes to h6. Mukose has 1 minute on the clock, and Harold has 10 minutes on the clock. So we see queen check, and now rook goes back, then queen comes in, and Mukose takes the queen. and Harold also takes the queen. Mukose has 10 seconds on the clock, finds his next move. Let's see what Mukose can find. He has 4 seconds, 3 seconds, and now if plays rook comes to c7, he has 1 second on the clock. Harold knows he's winning this. He plays rook takes f6 and Mukose loses on time and Harold becomes victorious. Thank you for watching and I wish you the best of luck in your games.